Okay, good afternoon, everyone who's attending. This is a meeting of the working group for the General Manager Search Committee for the Steamship Authority. I'd like to start by reading the usual recording announcement at the beginning of today's meeting, informing everyone that Sean Driscoll, the authority's communications director, is making audio and video recording in today's meeting. Is there anyone else making a audio recording in today's meeting? And if so, please identify yourself. If you're joining virtually, please press the raise your hand icon on the Zoom dashboard, or if you're joining by telephone, press *9 on the keypad. And when you're recognized, please state your name for the record. Thank you.
Just one. Kai.
Kai Quigley, the Inquirer and Mayor.
Thank you. And that's all.
Okay, thank you. Going to read the Massachusetts statement regarding remote participation. Pursuant to Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 as amended, Search Committee members are participating remotely in today's meeting because their physical attendance today would be unreasonably difficult. All Search Committee members in attendance and all members participating in the meeting by Zoom video conferencing will be clearly audible to each other. As a result of the remote participation in this meeting, any and all votes will be by roll call vote. Okay, and with that introduction, our agenda today is going to be a discussion of potential questions for candidates and a discussion of our evaluation criteria. We're going to try to work out with Faststream a schedule of executive session meetings to review proposed candidates with Faststream, and then establish a schedule of interviews in executive session with preferred candidates. Then we will schedule executive session to determine what the preferred candidate, who the preferred candidates actually will be. And following that, we'll schedule an open session to discuss final candidates to present to the board. At the end of today's meeting, we will also be open for public comment. And so with that, have we seen Mr. Jones yet, Sean?
Yes, he's joined us.
Oh, good. Hello, Bob.
Well, per usual, I have to go all over this computer to sign into anything. So, but I'm here.
Okay, wonderful.
Good to see you guys.
All right, let's start with an open discussion in terms of the potential questions we have for the candidates and evaluation criteria. And this would set the stage, I think, for Faststream to be able to work with the candidates so that they expect questions related to our interests and our concerns. And we had talked in the past about rubrics and quantification, the old issue of quantify versus qualify. And I guess I'd like to hear from our members in terms of, hang on, Bob, in terms of how they'd like to proceed with that. Mr. Jones, I saw your hand.
Yes, I had a very interesting conversation this morning. I read in the paper that the Airport Commission has appointed a new general manager, and they're in the town of Artsville, and they have to work under the open meeting laws the way we do and stuff. So the chairman of the board is a good friend of mine, so I called him to see how they went about the whole process. And like us, that we hired a outside firm to find some candidates for us. They pared that down, the outside firm did, and then internally they also pared it down. And what they did is, for the candidates, first of all, a portal was developed that any member of that particular commission that was charged with appointing the thing had access to, nobody else. And in that, they had resumes, and they also had an essay question that they had asked the respective candidates. And that seemed like a pretty nice thing. And once they went through all of that, they got into, the interviews and things like we do. We would have one further step as a steering committee than they had. And because we've got to narrow this down and come to an agreement as to the candidates that we're going to recommend going forth. And that way, which we know it has to be at least 2 or more. I think they had 4. And they developed a question and answer during the interview. They had 7 questions. Each board member had, 7 questions they asked, and they could also insert, 1 or 2 personal questions that they felt they wanted answered too. So they went through the interview one by one. There was only a single, it wasn't kind of like a mess of a circus of, all candidates being there and things like that. So it was one by one. And then they evaluated naturally the responses that they made in the portal and their resumes, etc. So in the end, I think they have 5 members. No, I think they have 7 members on the airport commission. And basically, at the end, they just took a vote, as to what their thoughts and the feelings were. And they voted on the candidate that they preferred. And as it turned out, it was an internal candidate who had an extensive background, not only on the Cape Cod airport, but also in other airports and things. So he was highly qualified, so it worked out very well. But the things that I appreciated the first part is the fact of establishing a portal that we can receive the resumes, we can go in and review them at our leisure, we can go in and read the responses to the essay. And the other thing that in preparing for this, and I had some questions and things, but one of the questions of concerns is if in fact we will have the opportunity to do just that prior to our interviews with them. We got to know who they are. And then to go back and revisit like I did when we're looking for the headhunters, I went back to each one and listened to it again, because that you pick up things that you missed. And so it's very valuable. So anyways, leaving it that way, maybe Jonathan, you can help us out as if any procedure plans that is good or bad, or what you would recommend for a procedure.
Fair enough. Jonathan or Matthew, you want to answer the question? I guess if I boil down what Bob's saying, having a portal where a website, a closed website, where members of this group and your firm could go in and access information on the prospective candidates that you qualify and bring to us, then go in and out at our leisure and do our research that way. Is this something you've done in the past? Is this something you could set up for us? And what's your thoughts?
I'm just trying to think if we've had any examples of a particular portal. If there has been portals, it's generally on the client side that has them already in place. I'm not sure that we have a portal or client zone immediately available, so I don't want to overpromise what we have, and I'm not sure whether you've ever seen one before. So, is it really just is it for security you need this? A portal could be an email, or it could be, copied into whoever. So what's specific about the portal that you need?
I think it's a means to going into a website that only the members of the committee can access, and to the answers to review a resume, and also to answer, in that case, an essay question from the candidates. And so maybe I could just ask you, one question. I assume that we will all get resumes of the potential candidates.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
And
may I?
that naturally is confidential
Yeah. There
and
are,
will remain confidential.
let me go close to the edge of my knowledge here on things, technology. But there are work groups that you can set up in, say, Google Docs, where you can have members access a website that Google hosts, and only the members can retrieve the information that's in the website and can deposit new items into the website. Is that the kind of thing you're looking for, Mr. Jones?
It is.
Okay. Rob, do you have any familiarity with Google Docs? I just learned of it recently because we're doing a family trip, and all of a sudden I'm getting Google Docs documents from my family.
Yeah, we use that and sort of similar other document portals all the time. Relatively straightforward. But back on the original ask about a portal, we've done lots of searches, and our search firms typically do have a portal. And it's a place like what Bob is describing, and it functions something like Google Docs or any of the other sites like that. But it's purpose built for searches and placing your resumes and things like that. Any of these can work. Google Docs is simple. It's even simpler to just email resumes. But then you're emailing, information around. But obviously, if we can access it, then we can limit it to who accesses it. But we're probably still going to download it onto our computer to have it to look at without being online.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim, this is Terry. Can I make a suggestion to the group? So when we work with the IT department, what I would recommend is that Jonathan and Matt, if they have information, they send it to Janice. We'll set up a portal folder system, either through whatever the IT and Stephen and the folks down there recommend that we use, whether that be, we use Microsoft Teams quite frequently here internally. And then what essentially happens is once that is set up, then the members can use their Steamship Authority email addresses as their usernames. They get in there and they can go in and out of there at their leisure. And you can set parameters on it as to whether or not someone can erase something, take something out. But essentially, I think it's just a viewing and printing platform if they really want it to be that way. So we can do all that. I don't think that's going to be too heavy a lift if that's what the committee would like us to do.
I think that is what we would like to happen.
Can we just back up for a second? And I'd be interested to hear what Jonathan and Matt would normally propose and what their process would normally be, just to have that as an understanding of a starting point. And it may be, not what we want, but I'd be curious to just hear what they normally do as a matter of course, and let us at least think about that.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, the vast majority of shortlist or presented candidates would go to normally to a single contact. It can be multiple, by email, trusted sources. They may be operating under different conditions than you are. Typically, the portals I've worked with are online HR systems that corporations have in play that we upload. CVs to. It's just hasn't been a demand out there in our client space to date. This is, may change that we have our own internal portal. We have our own IT team as well. If there's any issues on your side, I'm sure we can look into the same thing. But it just hasn't been a demand. Normally, a client has their own portal, or email suffices and is distributed. That has been the history so far.
All right. Why don't we leave it that we'll have Terry, would you talk to the IT people? You're hearing what we'd like, which is the ability to add comments, review documents in one place that's available only to the members of the search committee and to Faststream. And we can use that as our working platform.
Sure, that'll be done.
That satisfy your concerns, Bob?
Well, the only thing that I kind of back off a little bit is adding comment, because what you're doing is deliberating then when other people open that site and you put your comment. This is, to me, is just a read only.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Bob. So yeah, we'll lock it down and can view and print from it. How about that?
Yep.
Okay.
Good catch, Mr. Jones.
That's why I get paid so much money.
Oh, I was wondering about that. Okay. Is there any interest in a discussion of metrics, rubrics, or shall we just continue on and get to that? Do we want to discuss, for example, that each member of the search committee would prepare 4 to 7 questions to ask the candidates when we get to them? Or do you want to leave it on a more open basis? I'm interested in hearing from everybody, including Mr. Jones, but Rob, Nat?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't put my hand up. So back to Janice's list or your list or whoever that was, I think there were 9 questions.
Yeah.
Wasn't that right? Okay. So where does that list fit into this? I guess I would say I'm building from that. That was how I was sort of looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I added the union
Yeah.
component to that somewhere, plugging it into one of the questions or having it separate. I mean, I think we have to have both. I think we have to have specific questions because of the fairness between different people. But at the same time, there may be something that comes up just by itself when you're having a conversation with someone. You may not have thought of, so you want, I don't think we should like lock it down to just a list, but I think we do need to have some questions that are the same. Does that make any sense?
No, that makes perfect sense, because we need to have some flexibility as well to respond to issues that come up during the course of the conversation that someone may wish to follow up on or drill into.
Yeah. And also the person's background is going to drive questions that might be different than somebody else's. So that's how I'm looking at it. I like to keep things sort of a natural, progressive way instead of it being totally,
Scripted.
Yeah, exactly.
Rob, you had your hand up?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I do have an opinion.
Why am I not surprised?
I generally am aligned with Nat. We did a process for when we went to to choose the recruiter. Ended up at Faststream. We had 8 or 9 questions. We tended to ask the same questions. In fact, I think even the same people asked the same questions. And I think from the point that Nat made about fairness and consistency and trying to have sort of a way of measuring one candidate against another, that is a good process. So I think that's a good starting point. But then I also agree with Nat. about the notion that we want to have a conversation. We want to be able to, maneuver in accordance with the way the conversation's going, with the individual, with what their background is. And so there's some elements that would be, a little bit less scripted. So I think both of those are important parts of the process.
Good. Agree. Bob.
Just adding to that, I agree with the flexibility of it. I think the interviews will lead from one question to the next. But in any event, I do think there should be some standard questions that are asked of each candidate, because you can't compare apples to apples unless you're dealing with apples. So, some of the standardized questions, never mind laughing, standardized questions that we had with the headhunters, I think were helpful, but to me, to put them in some sort of order as to whether they're an 8, a 9, or a 7, or whatever, I just fall, flat. I get more, of an answer, are they qualified, for this, are they expert in it, are they semi, whatever. So in other words, a flexible steering, scoring system. I think, that's what we really ended up with, because we never added up all the numbers on the rubrics that we had developed. But I think they were good questions, and there was some standard questions that that would be obvious to make, is why did you seek this position? And broad questions like that. I think we need at least maybe a half a dozen of questions that we all agree that we'll ask specifically of each candidate. And maybe that number is not that number, but in any event, some specific questions that we can all agree that should be known by anybody, and the rest, I think part of a conversation. This is going to be a meet and greet. We're going to be looking at the candidate as to who they are and their background and things like this. And you've got to understand that candidate, he's going to be looking at us. He's going to have, or she's going to have, questions. Is this a committee or a board that's going to back me up? Does they have my back? They're going to be asking questions, when they're going to be looking at, whether when they come to Cape Cod, Patty Page is going to be singing about sand dunes and church bells and things like that, and where they may end up in a community and they go to the post office and there's going to be a warm welcome, or is their name on the post office wall? I mean, those are the questions and things any candidate is going to, want to investigate while they're talking to us. So it's a two-way street, and there's no second chance for first impression.
I think that's pretty well said. And I also think that the fact that we are going to go through the resumes that Faststream brings to us and the candidates and narrow that down before we actually get to sit with the smaller group of candidates, we're going to develop questions that are going to be specific to the people that we want to talk to. So we do have to have some flexibility, not only in questioning, but I think in the detail that we're going to want to get into with different candidates.
Yeah.
So Jonathan, sorry, Rob's now got his hand up.
Yeah, and maybe Jonathan and Matt can clarify this, but I guess to the point you just made, which is what I was going to say, but I'll say it slightly differently. We're going to have 10, 15, 12, whatever number of resumes in this portal, and we're going to review them. And theoretically, we're going to come up with a short list for the number of people we want to review. And I would argue that there is value to having a rubric that we use for the review of those resumes. And then we have a meeting and we review that. And one of the things that the rubric does is it really helps to cull that list pretty quickly, because you see the 7 or 8 that have lower scores, or that, and then you come up with your strategy for how you actually measure the ones that are on the short list and call for an interview. So I do think there's some merit to a rubric that helps us in that first step of the process in particular.
Rob, are you comfortable with those original questions that Nat referenced earlier as being the basis for that rubric, or do you think we should refine it further?
I have to be honest, I'd have to review it. It's not it's not committed to memory what was on that list. So I'm not really able to answer that question without taking another look at it.
I think you've just made yourself a subcommittee of one. Would you take a look at that
I will.
and then circulate what your sense of the rubric would be?
Sure, happy to.
Thank you.
And maybe Matt and Jonathan have heard our back and forth here. What their thoughts are would obviously be a helpful input here too.
Please, Matt, Jonathan.
So typically it's really easy to get into the channel purely of the employer mindset, which is what you need from the process. I think you're quite right that it's a two-way street. And there's an argument that says, well, actually, is the first discussion scripted, committee-led, a little bit formulaic, and lacks that personal interaction? There is an argument to say, should there be an initial screening interview, possibly of all the candidates, given that there may not be 15 candidates that are easily chosen between, and actually we act as your initial screen. So in reality, we would want to put forward people to you that you would hopefully want to speak to. My feeling is candidates who are not necessarily of your world will get a lot of value from understanding your world before they are then subject to the detailed, more grilling, probing aspects of the interview process. And that may not be all in one meeting. In an ideal world, if I zoom out to our broader operations, initial meetings, we generally would recommend that they are more interpersonal and allow candidates to understand a bit more about your world, what they might be walking into, what are the challenges, what are the what does working at the steamship feel like firsthand, and get to know you as people. It's an option. If you think about it, then they digest, come back, and are ready on the front foot, having bought into you and the opportunity, and are more committed, and can come back with and be ready for a more detailed, structured interview. Now, I appreciate you're working within all sorts of regulations that I'm not privy to all of them, but committees are great, can be a bit unwieldy, can be a little bit impersonal, and a free flow conversation, even if we look at it more as an initial screen or a candidate pre-screen, is an option, and it can build a lot of rapport for the second stage. And it's just my thoughts putting out there.
Right.
So I guess one way we could do it is one member of the committee could have a one-on-one conversation. I guess you're calling it, Jonathan, sort of a socialization conversation with the people whom you think might be the potential candidates.
Yeah, when I think of these challenges, I put myself in the candidate's shoes. If you have a good candidate, you want them to be bought into you.
Yeah.
If I'm applying to something, I want to perhaps have a chance to ask some questions and be a little bit more free flowing in advance. Then I'm committed to come back and really full power show you what I can do, answer the questions, and commit to a more structured process. And it doesn't have to be super scripted. It may just be an opportunity to get to know an individual rather than go through a rubric.
Well, look, that's why I asked that's why I used the term socialization.
Yeah, I would say yes in some way.
Well, as a sales background and things, and meet and greeting people, part of my culture in the business, the sales business, the first thing you got to do is you really have to sell yourself, and you got to sell the sizzle. You never go for the close until the end. You don't even talk about the close. But it's just a matter of getting to know each other at the first round. Maybe he wants to, wants to talk about his family experience, and they went to Martha's Vineyard or something. I don't know. I mean, it's just informal type of thing. That starts the things where you feel more relaxed and in moving into some more serious questions.
All right.
And there's no training a salesman. Each salesman has his own personality or her personality, and you can't teach that and things. But people, once you relate to the client and things, you're off in the right direction.
Yeah.
And that's where we, need to start and develop this whole thing.
Okay. Well, I'm willing, if the rest of the group it's acceptable to the rest of the group, to have a preliminary socializing chat with the people that Jonathan thinks are appropriate and then go forward. And I can also add my notes into our soon-to-be created Google Docs, whatever it is, Microsoft Doc, whatever it is, file, if that's what you'd like. Alternatively, you can do it.
I don't honestly like that approach. I think that, once we're interviewing each candidate, we have an opportunity, we're introduced as to who we are. And I assume, Jonathan, you and Matthew will be at those interviews and introduce the candidate, just as a cordial thing, each introducing each other. However, we've got to start, from that point, knowing who we're talking to and what our position, our role is with the Steamship Authority, and, what the candidate, who they are and where they are. I would ask, a real general question after getting knowing each other, why, what intrigued you to seek this position? I mean, it's an obvious question, and I think you get a very good response to a simple question.
Okay.
I don't.
Intelligent people can disagree. And the reason I was suggesting that, Bob, was teeing off of what Jonathan had said earlier. Rob, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I was curious from Jonathan and Matthew about how many resumes they think they will have to present, because that would sort of maybe dictate the practicality of having these individual conversations initially. I can visualize a scenario where we have X number of resumes, which we then reduce to some shorter number based on a review of resumes without talking to anybody. And then that reduced number maybe then gets the attention that we're talking about. And I can see having, a single set of interviews with that short list. And then when we have a shorter list, we would have a second round of interviews potentially with the shorter list or maybe the final candidate. I guess so back to my question, you guys, how many resumes do you think we're going to have to look at that might help us decide what the right strategy is for this first round?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Well, we see ourselves as your first round of interviews. So if we can't decide who are the best 10 from, potentially many more, then we're probably not serving you correctly. So I don't think we're going to have more than 10. And it is quite a unique organization with its unique challenges to attract and hire. So it's difficult to say precisely. We've had one or two, maybe, how should we say, question whether it's the right role for them, and we encourage them to speak to you directly to crystallize those thoughts. But I would say, are there 15 candidates who are equally placed to lead the steamship? Probably not. Can we, with intelligent questioning, figure out who are the best ones for you to see, and perhaps comment on those that just weren't strong enough? I mean, that's what we're really here for. So I would suggest you're not going to have 20 to wade through. If you're having to reject half of the people we put forward, I would be concerned that we probably haven't done our job terribly well.
Yeah, but 10 is still a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it may not reach 10. I just think that more than 10 is probably the ceiling. If we had 10, we're in good shape, but we may have 5 to 10.
Yeah, I mean, I like the sound of having 10, but that is a lot.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm thinking we're not interviewing 10 people. I think we might be interviewing 5 or 6. And so that to get from 10 to 5 or 6 is the step I'm talking about. That, what's that process? Because offhand, I can't see us interviewing 10 people.
No,
Well,
I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, that might be what this portal's for. It might be easily agreed between you that for consensus reasons that there are a initial batch that are more attractive, and we're really only talking about, in the first sense, committing perhaps to that socialization. If at that point you don't feel comfortable with them, there's nothing to say they can't be. Well, in my mind, you may have other process limitations, but if they are not right from that initial meet and greet and is strongly agreed, what is to be gained from taking them forwards?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure we've got agreement here in this working group about this socialization meet and greet, unless I'm missing something.
I like the whittling down that Jonathan's talking about. We got to let Faststream do their job to get, it's like buying a car that you don't really know exactly what, a used car condition, etc. We need them to whittle those cars down to a smaller number, or else we're just, why did we hire them? You know what I mean?
Nat, am I missing, or anybody here? And I guess it's to Jonathan. Am I missing something? Because my take was that Jonathan was suggesting this sort of socialization, introduction of the Steamship Authority to these candidates was something that he thought was necessary. Now, maybe I'm misreading that, because what I'm hearing from the group is they'd rather do a whittling down of a list without doing that step. Or again, unless I'm misinterpreting things.
First, I think we're going the right direction. I mean, when we started off, we were talking about, last meeting there was 5 potential on the list, and who knows what the list is. We can do that, but this is talking about the initial interview with a candidate. It's only polite that you introduce who you are and tell them a little bit about who your background and thing on both sides, either the candidate or us. As I say, they're going to want to know about us, as a board, and again, do we have their back or not? So you get to meet the person you talk to. That's a normal thing. That's only social etiquette. And then you start in and you pose some questions that you're ready to go into, and you lead it to, and he should be, I keep saying he, bad habit, he or she should be comfortable in that role. But you walk into it, you just don't, throw them a bunch of questions and expect you're going to get some sort of answer. First of all, you want to know who they are,
Right.
And I agree with, going back to Rob. I mean, I think he's on the exact same page that I am. You got to whittle it down, but how do you do it? I mean, now we're talking about process, but I think, when you introduce, Well, let me ask you this, Jonathan. I mean, I see if I were in your position representing or presenting this candidate, that you would just give a short, overview of, who he or she is, without, just saying, well, this is the right person or whatever, but
Yeah.
just a special thing. And the same with us. If we were not here and we went to coffee, just think about that. How would you introduce yourself? How would you start your conversation? I mean, that's just social etiquette.
The other option, well, there's a couple in terms of the format of our submission. Resume, of course, is a core document, but we ask and we'll be asking and we'll be supplying covering letters, which is an important voice of the candidate piece, specific to the role and their motivation. So there'll be a document that brings them alive in their own words a little bit anyway, plus separately our assessment notes and detail about the candidate. So there'll be like a 3-part written submission. And I think that's important at this level, that candidates can represent themselves in the written word, and that our notes are, give you a feel for why we think they were should be introduced, spoken to, and discussed. If the committee feels that too many stages are likely, and look, if we're in the luxurious position and the shortlist is dynamic, so it's hard to make a judgment immediately, that we have too many candidates, perhaps we have a discussion between us who we feel is the strongest, or you review on paper. That's fine. But in any case, I don't think we're going to have a situation where we have too many candidates, just given the unique nature of this role, location, background, skills, and the requirements you have. But I'd say in any structured interviewing, even if it's a first section of the interview that's more free flow to set the scene and give people a bit more buy-in, that's okay. I'm a believer in people sleeping on a meeting and digesting and coming back to be more grilled, if you will, but it's not essential, but it can be helpful.
Well, Jonathan, I'm relying on your expertise.
Yeah.
But you're hearing from the board, it seems to me, is a reluctance to have this sort of an individual meeting with one of us, and instead working that socialization into the initial interview. Now, does that serve the cause that we're all trying to join here? In your opinion?
Sorry, Jim, you're asking me directly.
Yeah, yes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay. Well, I think it sets the tone, actually. And what, if it's done in one meeting, that's that's acceptable. I think going straight into structured rubric type questions, and bear in mind, it's hard it's hard for you guys to create a rapport if you're only asking those type of questions and listening to very structured answers. I think it gives you a better feel for who someone is you're engaging with, even before you jump straight into those questions. I mean, it may extend the length of the interview by a small amount, but I think it gives everyone the chance to settle into the process, and a broader questions that allow people to talk about themselves and or ask. Maybe there's a short pitch on the steamship. Pitch and grill might be the format here. What come in, the water's lovely, and then how good a swimmer are you? That might be the format. If it's just how well can you swim, that's great. But equally, you need to, you're trying to create a rapport and a buy-in here for someone who ultimately we hope you'll like.
Okay, so if I parse that down, you're saying setting up the initial conversations to be initially and this is what Bob Jones is saying, as in any sales issue, you want to get people comfortable first, and you want to understand the person, and you want to develop a rapport. And so you're underscoring the need for that to happen in whatever format we choose.
I think so. I think a little pricey on the role, and an opportunity to maybe engage a bit and for them to listen a little bit more about the role directly from you, whilst they're gathering in their mind who you are and getting a comfortable feel in the room is an important piece.
Yeah.
And any preamble puts them at their ease and allows you to feel the person as opposed to them recalling facts and dates.
Yeah. And it's so much harder when you're doing it remotely. Okay. Yeah. Any members of the working group have anything further on this part of the discussion?
Okay,
Good.
so are you calling this Pat 1?
Good question.
Me? We
Well,
were,
you read the,
yeah, well, our item 1, Bob, was discussion of potential questions and evaluation criteria. Item 2 is schedule sessions. That's why I'm going part 1, part 2.
that's what I asked. We had 2.
Unless anybody wants to discuss item 1 any further.
No, I'm fine. I think we exhausted that.
Rob, Nat?
I'm good.
I'm good. Thanks. I think we've circled to a good outcome.
I agree. And you actually have a working item.
I do.
Thank you. All right. In terms of scheduling sessions that would be an executive session to review proposed candidates with Faststream, what's your sense on that, Jonathan, in terms of scheduling? You had talked about this 3rd and 4th week of July in the past.
Sorry, Jim. Yeah, okay. I think we're going to need that time. So right now the target is probably 29th, 28th of July. Just forgive me, I haven't proposed those dates to you, but that would be where we're targeting.
29 and 28, or 28 and 29. Okay. So the 28th and the 29th of July.
From my side, they would be possibilities. We'll need to all liaise on those dates.
Okay, so that would be your sense of that. We'll pencil that in. And that's when we're going to sit down with you, having reviewed in the portal, if you will, that will be set up, the information that you're able to give us on these proposed candidates.
Correct. Yeah, there's a chance for us to discuss the candidates.
Right. And we would like to have had the information in advance so we can have a two-way intelligent discussion. Rob, I see your virtual hand.
Yeah, I was just curious if we couldn't get an update. It's been 10 days since our last conversation. I'd be curious to hear what Jonathan and Matt have to say about candidates that may have emerged over the last, and just how those searches going at Broadway. Not detailed results, but just a little bit of a status update, if that's okay. At whatever is appropriate time. It doesn't have to be at this moment, but I just asked the question. But I just thought it seemed like worth doing.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Well, look, we're working through later applicants. We haven't closed the door to new applicants, of course, and we are working through scheduling the rubric type questions. I'll use the terminology that we've maintained in this search. Basically, our more detailed discussions with those who are previously presented themselves to us. We've had those first round discussions as working those through. We have had one or two that have, as with all searches will happen, have either been snapped up or changed their view on the opportunity. So that's why we don't give exact numbers until we get to the finish line, because that's when we know where we are. But right now, I think we're in the region of five serious candidates now, and we still have a couple of weeks where we've got quite a lot of following up and chasing up with people that we think have expressed interest. We want to actually crystallize that out and make a decent shortlist for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to, I see that Terrence is on the call. Terrence, I'm going to ask you and Janice to see that we do set up this portal so that both Faststream and members of the working group can start to populate it with questions and with information, so that well before the 28th and the 29th, we're actually working with some information.
Yep,
And
that shouldn't be a problem, Jim.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay, so assuming that we review on the 28th and 29th the proposed candidates, what's your sense, Jonathan, in terms of when we would actually get to interviews in executive session with the preferred candidates?
Well, I guess that's a function of everyone's availability. So I don't have the candidates' full availability at this time, and we'll be asking that perhaps when they are selected. We'll try and get ahead of that with holiday dates. We are in a season where it's
Yeah.
that time of year, and executive search interviews can take time when there's a committee or multiple members. I mean, we have to work around that. Important thing is to find the who, and any obvious blocks of time they're unavailable, and then we go through the slightly laborious task of lining up diaries, which is a challenge in any process of this type. It's a little bit hard to give long range exact dates on that, but I would suggest we'll try and compact it down to keep the experiences with as much momentum as we can.
All right, so we're talking holiday schedule dependent, but perhaps the first 2 to 3 weeks in August.
That would make sense, yeah, for sure.
All right. And once we get that, then we will need to work with you, see if we can get to preferred candidates to take to an open session and discuss final candidates that we decide to present to the board, which should be then towards the end of August. That makes sense to everybody that's part of this group? Nat, you okay?
I agree. Yeah, I'll let you know about the 28th, 29th, just my own personal. I may have an appointment in Boston. My wife's got the calendar. It's unbelievable for my situation, but I will let you know immediately.
We will make it work, and we will work around your dates.
Yep. Thank you. Appreciate it. I just can't tell you that yet, but I will get right back to you and Janice.
No, I understand. We all understand.
Yep.
All right.
Where are we at now? Number 3.
I think we're through item number 5.
Ooh, good.
And we're now coming, unless anybody on this working group or Jonathan or Nat, you have any other items to discuss?
Just general. I do agree with Rob's points about this too. I think Jonathan and his partner understand us a little more now than they did at the beginning, obviously. And I think that, I trust them in the sense of whittling down a little bit. I mean, I'd love to talk to everybody and have, how I am. I love talking to people, but this is a little bit more complicated than just an average conversation. And I trust their points. They understand what we're doing. But I don't want to whittle it too much. Just the fringe candidates that may be there, I think is important to do. We don't want to lengthen this process further than it needs to be. So I kind of trust them in the sense of being able to do that. And that's just my opinion. So appreciate it.
Got it. Rob, anything?
Just a question about I've been having trouble putting my finger on the document that you asked me to take a harder look at. If that can be shared, the list of preliminary questions.
I think if you go to Janice Kennefic, she has it.
Okay.
I'm sure she has it, and I know I've got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've done done multitasking. I can't seem to put my finger on it, so that'd be helpful.
There was 9 questions, I believe. Jim, right?
Yes.
And we added the union thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you don't get anywhere with that, let me know, and I'll start digging through my archives too.
Thanks.
Not a problem. Mr. Jones, anything further?
Yes. I want to make sure when we leave this meeting or the next, that we know exactly the steps that we're going to take in front. And when I'm saying that, I just heard a yell here. So in any event, once we, as a steering committee or screening committee, get through with our deliberations and findings, are we going to make a report to the board? And how are we going to do that? Are we going to get in a question and answer things? But anyways, I mean, we've been through this whole process here and things. We're going to have to come to some sort of determination. And are we going to do that with a letter from the board, from the committee to the board? Or how are we going to effectuate that? So I want to know that, up front, so we know what the process is. I don't want to look unprofessional, not prepared, or anything. So we're going to answer some questions like that. So that's number one, is to make sure to determine how we're going to do this. Now, step number two, and now that we have the candidates that we're going to interview, you and I, Jim, are a member of the board and the hiring committee. And the role that the board council has here and things like this, how are we going to incorporate them, or do we incorporate them with a final report to the committee? So it's a question mark. I don't have an answer for it, so I'm looking for an answer.
Okay. Well, Bob, two things. One is, it was my intention at Tuesday's board meeting to go to the board with an update of where we are and what we're doing, and ask the board their preference in terms of how we would present the final candidates to them. So
That's fine.
that would be number one. In terms of number two, I think the fact that this working group has 2 members of the board and 2 members of the port council would speak to the involvement of the port council and the board, because we'd be taking to the board the results of this joint meeting, these joint meetings.
I agree with that. I'm just concerned about the recommendation, because once we're into public session, we can't go back into executive session. We're done. Now we put on a different hat, you and I.
Mhm.
And one of the things I want to talk about right now is the board, per se. When we vote, I would suggest that one person, one vote, not a weighted vote between the islands and, the mainland. That just wouldn't be a fair situation. When we end up voting, that should be thrown out. Do you agree?
I hadn't thought of it.
I did.
Okay. So I don't know whether I agree or disagree, but I will think on it. And that should definitely be something that we should discuss with the board.
I will make my recommendations to the board.
And I will think on it.
But anyways, as I said before to you, the devil's in the details.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got to look at right now, before the fact and not after the fact.
Agree.
I'm
To
gonna,
the best of our ability.
The devil you can see and the devil you can't. You're right. Rob, you have your hand up, and
I think Nat was first.
Just,
you are first.
I don't normally. Wow. This, Bob thought of something I didn't think of. I wish I came up with this. This is a great idea. Why? Because this committee was set up the way it is because of the weighted vote to be
Right?
even. Okay? And I know not many people understand this. I think we should check with Terry a little bit on this. But I like Bob's idea. I think it's the right thing if it's allowed through the enabling. I mean, I don't even know if we've ever done anything like this before, but it makes sense. We've never chosen a general manager with a process like this before, ever. The last one was kind of formal. The one before it was all in favor, say aye, in the coldest room in Woods Hole. I'll never forget that meeting. Freezing in there. So this is really important, what Bob just said, and it's actually transparent and more sort of outside the box, and I think it's the right thing to do if we can do it legally through the legislation, etc. So I want to just give him this is a good one. I wish I thought of it. I think it's a good idea.
I believe the board has the power to do that amongst themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know, Bob, I'm just saying, I don't remember anything like this before, but I think it's a good idea.
Great. Good.
Thank you.
Rob?
That was exactly my point. That we would need to have a legal opinion as to the doability of that, but it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So we will suss that out. Terrence is on the call. Terrence, come back to us maybe at the board meeting with that.
Just one other thing, I think between the lines of what Bob said was also about the role of the Port Council, and I think the role of the Ports Council is actually being played out right now in terms of our two members being Port Council members. My view was that this body would be making a recommendation to the Board of Governors, and then the Board of Governors makes the decision. And so the role of the Port Council is by virtue of having two members on this committee. I don't see us having two stops, one at the Port Council and then the Port Council making, I don't see that in this case.
No, and let me say, I absolutely agree with
Yeah.
you. This is a 4-person working group with 4 people with equal weight on making this decision. Okay.
Yeah, gentlemen, just on that point. So yes, you're right. So the board created this committee to make recommendations to the board. So that's exactly correct. As far as the other matter, like any other good jurist, I'll take it under advisement and I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
And let you know.
If you could let us know at the board meeting next Tuesday, please.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to look at the agenda that we posted this morning and see if we have to add something to that. So.
Yep.
All righty.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that if it isn't on there already, it would be an update on the search committee to the board.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is the, the complications to trying to, blend the open meeting law with the enabling legislation. If you, Jim, and Rob over there in Nantucket, call up each other, or one calls the other and says, "Happy birthday," and you're deliberating.
It's just like that one.
Who's to say it's
Don't
happy
even go there. It's like, I know, it's ridiculous, isn't it? It's just how it is, but I love this.
Get your
idea.
happy birthdays in now, Bob. Happy birthday, everybody. Okay.
Well, it may be happy because they lived another year, but it may not be happy because he's got one left, one fewer left.
Okay. Anything further that's on?
Yep.
Anything further to talk about here before we go to public comment? Nothing? All right. At that point, we will take any public comment. Sean?
Sure, anyone who has public comment can use the raise their hand function. And I have Beth O'Connor.
Hello, everybody. First of all, I just want to say, in speaking to, quite a few people on this topic, everyone is, excited and believe everyone is committed to getting a really good, several really good candidates. So thank you all, and Jonathan and Matthew too. My question is twofold. So, and it's probably more for Mr. Keneally than anything else. I just don't want us to get in trouble with the OML. And I know, Mr. Jones, you quote that a lot, but it's something that I'm also very familiar with. So the 2 points that I want to ask are this, just again, because if there's a candidate that comes forth, even though everybody supports it, and maybe myself too, we certainly don't want to get into troubles later on with our open meeting law, which I'm assuming Matthew and Jonathan would not be privy to. So the 2 questions I have, and you don't have to answer these right away, is that last round of interviews has to be in public session. And my question is, it's unclear to me, and if that public session is in the full board or you all. So it has to be at least 2 candidates, according to the open meeting law for hiring. So I don't know the answer to that. Which board is going to be, or group of people take it up? And maybe you just need to get back to me on that. What happens at the very
I
end?
could take that now.
Okay.
Jamie, are you okay with that?
Right.
Okay, so Beth, I think we sent you over a copy, or there's
Yeah.
how the executive session, I'm sorry, the steering committee should work. That's our intent, is to follow that. So essentially what happens is I guess the first part is the public meeting. So the public interviews are done with the full board. So Jim and Bob Jones would participate in that, obviously, as board members, and then the other members of the board would also be asking questions at that session. And to your point, yes, the open meeting law requires two or more people to be interviewed in the public. So that's the goal, to get at least 2, if not more people, if that's the recommendation that we go forward with to the board. So
Okay. And so the recommendation that this board makes, the screening committee makes to the big board, is the candidates.
That's correct.
The minimum of 2 candidates. Okay. That's how I read it too.
Okay.
And the second question I have is, and this is probably where I feel like we might be in some hot water already, is according to the open meeting law, and you guys, I'm not calling you out because I think everybody's really trying here, and you're trying to get some good candidates, and that's really, really good. But questions, the whole nature of us being on record of doing these questions, preparing these questions, these 9 questions, and you guys have circulated it outside of a public meeting, that in of itself is a violation of the open meeting law, I believe. And I'm not calling you out. I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble. What I'm trying to do is protect the process so that when we get to the other side, no one can come up and say, hey, there's an open meeting law violation. And you don't have to answer that.
Well, I'll take that on right now,
Okay.
Beth, because I think one of the things we're looking at, I haven't seen these questions, to be honest with you. I'm not sure how they've been circulated, number one. Number two, I think if there's a discussion about the questions in public session, which is what we intend to do, I think we're okay. If that becomes a point of order, then I can certainly bring it up with the Attorney General's office, and I regularly am in touch with them on a lot of things. So, so we could do that. But, I think to your point, I think this is, as Nat pointed out, this is a new process for everybody, but I think at this point, it's been one of the most transparent processes that we've had. And that's a credit to all the folks that have been involved in it. And, so we'll continue in that vein.
And as a side note, Harry, as a reminder, we do have an open records request for that from Amy Cody. So we're reviewing that sort of along 2 tracks.
Okay.
Okay. And I would also point out that, at least from my end of this, Beth, all of these 9 questions were developed individually and sent, not circulated, but sent to Janice Kennefack, who is a human resources director.
Sure.
So they were sent, and as we do, think people are copied in the blind on things so as not to violate the open meeting law.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I just think that the public has to see those. I think, according to what my understanding of the OML is, the public has to see those questions at some point before you can have the interviews. I could be wrong on that, Terrence.
This is okay. We're in public comment now. Terrence, your comments, and we'll advise.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Jim.
Okay. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you for the work that's going in on this. As Nat has said a number of times, this is a hugely important thing for the Steamship Authority and for the residents of our community. So I appreciate the attention that's going into this. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Second.
And there is a second, and it comes to a roll call vote. Mr. Jones?
Jones, aye.
Okay. Mr. Munir?
Munir, aye.
Mr. Lowell?
Aye.
Malkin, aye. Thank you all for your time and attention and your work.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Yep.